14 American suburbs dying faster than anyone expected. You know what's absolutely insane? For 70 years, the American suburban dream was bulletproof. Buy a house in the suburbs. Raise kids. Watch your home value go up forever. Retire rich. That was the deal. Except now there are suburbs across America where home values are falling, not rising. Where population is declining, not growing. Where schools are closing, shopping centers are empty, and the whole economic model is collapsing in real time. I'm not talking about Rust Belt cities. I'm talking about suburbs that were built in the 80s, 90s, even 2000s. Places that were supposed to be the safe bet, the good investment, the smart move, and now they're dying, faster than anyone expected. With McMansions sitting boarded up, foreclosure signs on cul-de-sacs, and entire subdivisions turning into suburban ghost towns. So today we're going through 14 American suburbs that are declining so fast they're basically case studies in how the suburban dream can become a suburban nightmare. Let's get into it. Here's why this is happening and why it matters way more than people think. The American suburb was built on a few key assumptions. Jobs would stay in the area. Property values would always increase. Young families would always want to move there. And cheap gas would make long commutes viable forever. Those assumptions are breaking down. Jobs moved overseas or to different regions. Remote work changed where people want to live. Gas isn't cheap anymore. And young people increasingly can't afford or don't want suburban single-family homes. The suburbs on this list are experiencing what happens when all these trends hit at once. Population decline, businesses closing, home values dropping, tax bases shrinking, and a death spiral where decline causes more decline. These aren't poor areas that were always struggling. These are suburbs that had their moment, that thrived for 20 or 30 years. And then the economic conditions that created them changed and they started dying. Some are exurbs that were too far from job centers when gas got expensive. Some are in regions where the economy collapsed. Some are just boring sprawl that nobody wants to live in anymore when cities are cool again. The result is suburbs with empty houses, failing schools, and shopping centers that are half vacant. Places where your home is losing value every year instead of gaining. Where the dream of building wealth through home ownership is backwards. And here's the thing. There are way more of these than people realize. We're just looking at 14, but there are dozens more showing early warning signs. The suburban model that worked for 70 years is breaking in a lot of places. Number 14. Joliet, Illinois, starting with the Chicago exurb where cheap houses meet expensive everything else. Joliet is about 40 miles southwest of Chicago. Population has been relatively flat or declining slightly. Home values have barely kept pace with inflation. Some neighborhoods are seeing outright declines. Joliet was supposed to be affordable Chicago suburbs. And it is affordable because nobody wants to live there. Long commutes, rising property taxes, schools struggling, shopping areas looking rough. The problem is Joliet is too far from Chicago to be convenient, but too dependent on Chicago to survive on its own. When remote work happened, people who could leave did. When gas prices spiked, the commute became unsustainable for many. Joliet is where affordable Chicago suburbs became cheap for a reason. Number 13. Gary, Indiana adjacent suburbs. The suburbs around Gary that thought they'd escape Gary's fate. They didn't. Towns like Merrillville and Hobart are seeing population decline and home value stagnation or decline. These were the good areas where people fled when Gary collapsed. Now they're following Gary's trajectory just more slowly. The problem is the whole regional economy collapsed when steel died. The suburbs can't survive when the core city is dead. Jobs left. Young people left. What remains is aging population and declining everything. These suburbs are stuck in no man's land. Too far from Chicago to benefit from its economy. Too close to Gary to escape its problems. And slowly dying in between. Gary's suburbs are where escaping one decline led straight into another. Number 12. Youngstown, Ohio suburbs, Ohio Rust Belt suburbs where the American dream rusted out. Boardman, Austintown, suburbs around Youngstown are all declining. Population down. Home values down. Commercial vacancy up. Schools consolidating. The whole region is in managed decline. These suburbs were built for steel workers and middle managers. When the mills closed, the reason for existing disappeared. What's left is people who can't leave and retirees who bought when times were good. The suburbs around Youngstown can't reinvent themselves because there's nothing to reinvent around. No jobs. No young people. No economic base. Just slow decline. Youngstown suburbs are where suburban sprawl met economic reality and lost. Number 11. Antioch, California, the Bay Area exurb where affordable became undesirable. Antioch is way out in the East Bay, almost to the Central Valley. It boomed in the 2000s as the affordable option for Bay Area workers. Then the foreclosure crisis hit and it got destroyed. Population has been stagnant or declining. Home values crashed in 2008 and never really recovered to previous peaks relative to closer Bay Area suburbs. Crime went up. Schools struggled. Commercial areas look rough. Antioch's problem is it's too far from San Francisco and Oakland to be desirable, but too tied to the Bay Area economy to survive independently. It's the worst of both worlds. Long commutes, high California cost of living, none of the Bay Area benefits. Antioch is where affordable Bay Area became a punchline. Number 10. Flint, Michigan suburbs. The suburbs around Flint that are somehow still declining. Burton, Grand Blanc, suburbs around Flint are losing population. Home values are either stagnant or declining. The water crisis scared away anyone who could leave. What remains is people trapped in a declining region. The entire Flint metro area is in a death spiral. The city is a disaster. The suburbs are following. Auto jobs left. Nothing replaced them. Population keeps dropping. Tax bases keep shrinking. These suburbs were built for auto workers. When auto left, the suburbs should have disappeared. They're hanging on but barely, and every year it gets worse. Flint suburbs are where the auto industry's decline became suburban decline. Number 9. Stockton, California, the Central Valley city where suburban sprawl met bankruptcy. Stockton suburbs exploded in the 2000s with cheap housing for Bay Area and Sacramento commuters. Then 2008 hit and Stockton became foreclosure capital of America. The city went bankrupt. The suburbs collapsed. Population has been relatively flat with some areas declining. Home values crashed and still haven't recovered to pre-crisis levels adjusted for inflation. Crime is high. Schools are struggling. Commercial vacancy is bad. Stockton's problem is it was built on sand. Literally and figuratively, the economy was based on real estate and commuters. When real estate crashed and gas got expensive, there was nothing left. Stockton is where the suburban sprawl model died in the Central Valley sun. Number 8. North Las Vegas, Nevada, the Las Vegas suburb that went all in on growth and lost. North Las Vegas boomed in the 2000s with cheap housing and endless construction. Then 2008 happened, foreclosures everywhere. Half-built subdivisions abandoned. The economy collapsed. Population growth has been much slower than pre-crisis. Home values crashed and took over a decade to recover. But recover to what? North Las Vegas is still basically a suburban wasteland on the edge of Vegas. The problem is North Las Vegas has no reason to exist except cheaper housing near Vegas. It has no downtown, no culture, no economy except service jobs in Vegas. When Vegas struggles, North Las Vegas dies. North Las Vegas is where what happens in Vegas was suburban foreclosure. Number 7. Riverside, California, the Inland Empire suburban sprawl where affordable California became unlivable. California. Riverside exploded as the affordable option for Los Angeles and Orange County workers willing to commute, and the commute is brutal. R+ each way, sometimes 2 hours in traffic, and gas is expensive. Population growth has slowed significantly. Home values relative to coastal California have declined. The quality of life issues are mounting. Heat, smog, traffic, crime in some areas, schools struggling. Riverside's problem is it's too far from LA to be convenient but too expensive to be worth it. You're paying California prices and taxes for desert sprawl 2 hours from the coast. The math doesn't work for a lot of people anymore. Riverside is where affordable Southern California meant miserable commutes forever. Number 6. Lehigh Acres, Florida, the Florida suburban development that forgot to develop. Lehigh Acres is outside Fort Myers. It was planned as a massive suburban community in the 50s and 60s, and it's still not fully built out because it's basically empty sprawl in the middle of nowhere. Population growth has been slow. Home values are low compared to coastal Florida. The foreclosure crisis hit hard, and what exists is just street after street of disconnected suburban sprawl with minimal services or character. Lehigh Acres is what happens when you plan a suburb but forget to plan an economy or culture, or reason for it to exist. It's just houses on a grid in Florida swampland. Lehigh Acres is where suburban planning met reality and gave up. Number 5. Palmdale, Lancaster, California. The high desert exurbs where LA workers went to die. Metaphorically, mostly. Palmdale and Lancaster are way out in the Antelope Valley, north of LA over the mountains. They boomed as super affordable options for LA workers, and they're pretty grim. Population growth has stalled. Home values are low for California, but still not low enough to justify living in the high desert 2 hours from LA. Crime is bad in parts. Schools are struggling. It's hot. It's isolated. It's depressing. The only reason to live in Palmdale or Lancaster is you can't afford anywhere else in Southern California. That's not a sustainable economic model. People leave as soon as they can. Palmdale and Lancaster are where affordable LA meant desert exile. Number 4. Outer Detroit suburbs. The sprawling suburbs beyond the inner ring where white flight kept running. Places like Macomb County's outer areas, parts of Oakland County far from the city, they're all stagnant or declining. Population not growing. Home values flat or down. Commercial areas struggling. These suburbs were built on Detroit's auto wealth. When that wealth disappeared, the suburbs became expensive to maintain with declining tax bases. Services get cut. Schools struggle. People who can leave do. The problem is these suburbs are too far from Detroit to benefit if Detroit ever recovers. But to dependent on Detroit's economy to survive independently, they're stuck in decline. Outer Detroit suburbs are where sprawl met economic collapse and stalled out. Number 3. Bakersfield, California suburbs. The Central Valley oil and agriculture suburbs where neither industry is hiring. Bakersfield's suburban areas exploded in the 2000s. Cheap housing, oil jobs, agriculture. Then oil crashed, agriculture mechanized, and the suburban boom ended abruptly. Population growth has slowed dramatically. Home values are lower than most of California, but still not worth it for the quality of life. Hot, polluted, few good jobs, schools struggling, crime in some areas. Bakersfield suburbs were built on extractive industries. When those industries declined, there was nothing to replace them. The suburbs keep existing, but they're not thriving. Bakersfield suburbs are where oil money dried up and took the dream with it. Number 2. Exurbs of Cleveland. The far suburbs of Cleveland where people fled the city and found decay anyway. Places in outer Cuyahoga County, Lake County, Geauga County, far from Cleveland proper, are stagnating or declining. Population flat or down. Home values not keeping pace with national averages. Commercial vacancy increasing. These suburbs were the escape from Cleveland's decline. But they can't survive without Cleveland having a healthy economy, and Cleveland doesn't. So the suburbs slowly die too. The region has no growth engine. Jobs have left. Young people leave. What remains is aging suburbs with aging populations and declining everything. It's slow, but it's inevitable. Cleveland exurbs are where fleeing urban decline led to suburban decline. Number 1. Entire Inland Empire exurbs. Victorville, Hesperia, Adelanto at number 1. The absolute poster child for dying suburbs. The high desert exurbs of Southern California. Victorville, Hesperia, Adelanto. These places are way out in the Mojave Desert, hour and a half or more from LA. They boomed in the 2000s as ultra-cheap options for LA workers. Then 2008 hit and they became foreclosure wastelands. Home values crashed and never recovered. Population growth is minimal. Commercial vacancy is terrible. Crime is bad. Schools are struggling. And the quality of life is brutal. It's the desert. It's hot. It's isolated. It's depressing. These suburbs have no reason to exist except they're cheap. But cheap isn't enough when you're living in the desert 2 hours from civilization. People who can leave do. What remains is people trapped in suburban sprawl that should have never been built. The foreclosure crisis left entire subdivisions empty. Some have never recovered. There are neighborhoods that look post-apocalyptic with boarded-up houses and empty streets. These are the suburbs that prove the suburban model can fail catastrophically. They were built on the assumption that LA workers would always be willing to commute 3 hours a day for cheap housing. That assumption was wrong. The Inland Empire high desert is where the American suburban dream went to die in the heat. So what does all this mean? First, the suburban model that worked for 70 years is breaking in a lot of places. The assumptions it was built on don't hold anymore. Jobs moved, demographics changed, preferences shifted, and some suburbs are dying as a result. Second, not all suburbs are dying. Wealthy inner-ring suburbs are doing fine. Walkable suburbs near thriving cities are fine. But exurbs, sprawl suburbs, suburbs in declining regions, they're struggling. Third, these dying suburbs create real human suffering. People are trapped in homes that are losing value, in neighborhoods that are declining, with no good options. Selling means taking a loss. Staying means watching things get worse. Fourth, the fiscal math is brutal. Suburban sprawl is expensive to maintain. When population and tax base decline, municipalities can't afford to maintain infrastructure and services. So things decay, which causes more people to leave. Death spiral. And fifth, this is going to get worse before it gets better in a lot of these places. The trends causing decline aren't reversing. Population aging, jobs not coming back, young people not wanting to move there. These suburbs are structurally declining. So there you have it. 14 American suburbs that are dying faster than anyone expected. This isn't about hating suburbs or suburban living. This is about recognizing that the economic model that created suburban America has changed, and some suburbs can't adapt to the new reality. The suburbs that are thriving are the ones near strong job markets, with good transit, with walkable town centers, with diverse economies. The ones dying are sprawl, car-dependent, economically dependent on industries that left or never materialized. For people living in these declining suburbs, the options are limited. You can ride it out and hope things stabilize. You can sell at a loss and move somewhere with better prospects. Or you can stay and watch decline continue. For people considering buying in suburbs, this is a warning. Not all suburbs are good investments. Location matters. Regional economy matters. Demographics matter. Just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's a deal. The American suburban dream was real for a lot of people for a long time, but it's not guaranteed. And these 14 suburbs prove that sometimes the dream fails and leaves behind declining sprawl and trapped homeowners. So here's my question for you. If you live in a suburb that's declining, are you staying or planning to leave? And if you're looking to buy, would you avoid these types of suburbs or see them as opportunities? Let me know in the comments. Because suburban decline is reshaping American geography and we need to talk about it honestly. And if you found this depressing but accurate, maybe subscribe. We cover housing markets, suburban decline, and uncomfortable truths about where we live. Someone has to document the death of the suburban dream. Might as well be me.